Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about one other menu in the modeling menu set that it is left, which is Mesh Tool. And basically, by covering this menu, you will have the fundamental knowledge of using the modeling toolkit in Maya. And after that, I can show you some techniques to do different form of modeling with polygon and NURBS. Also, I have to mention all the videos that I covered so far about modeling is modeling with mesh or modeling with polygon, not with NURBS. NURB is through curves, which we will talk about them as well. So that menu, you can find it one of the panels, which is mesh tool. And one other thing that I can tell you, I mean, like for if you find it helpful, when you click on a menu, you will see like a lot of dots at the top part of the menu. If you click on that part, it basically opens up the menu for you in another different window. And I mean, like it depends if you feel comfortable using it in that way, then you don't have to every time go and click on the mesh tool in order to have access to these tools. So in mesh tool, we are going to talk a little bit about insert edge loop, multi-cut tool, sculpting tools. So to use the insert edge loop, let me tell you how it works. And what I do, I'm going to select that tool, but I reset the tool to make sure this is the default setting, and I'm gonna create a cube. So what is happening right now if I am in the object mode? You will see I don't have a lot of subdivisions, which is basically the somehow the edge loops, like the mm, like different edges that I'm gonna have if I add the subdivision. So with T, I can add the subdivision width and height, or even for the depth. So the use of subdivision for the polygon modeling or to add it to a mesh, it basically adds more surfaces, more divisions, and more details in order to make it easier for your modeling. So imagine that you created your cube or like the basic geometry that you create, and you create your more advanced and refined shape out of the basic model that you have. So you added subdivision from the beginning in your model, but sometimes you don't add more subdivisions, and later in the process of your modeling you need to have more loops or edges. This is a tool, insert edge loop. This is a tool that help you to add more edges or basically subdivisions to your model. So what you need to do when you select it, it actually creates the edge. it, it automatically, as you click on it, it goes to the edge component selection, as you can see it in the modeling toolkit. So if I click on every edge that I want, it basically creates an edge loop on the opposite of the edge that I'm selecting it. So like if I do it for this horizontal edge, it creates an edge loop in a vertical side for me, as you can see. So you need to just click on every single edge that you need. And if you hold your mouse, don't release it, then you can basically modify the location of your edge loop. So when I click here, it creates on the opposite side of my edge, and as you can see, I haven't released my mouse yet, and it creates the edge loop, and I can like choose where I want to put it here. For example, I put it here. And if I hold Alt and I rotate around my object, you can see it creates that loop around the object, around the mesh. And for example, if I want to do another one in the other side, um, so I select this one and I create this edge loop. You can see now this edge loop is created as well. So what is the use of, I mean, like, let me show you one simple example of like when you have more details, more edge loops, what would be the difference when you have more. For example, right now, if I smooth my mesh, if I go back to the object mode, and if I select it, you can see the details of subdivision in this area but not in on the other side, like this area. So take a look when I smooth it, like how it affects this edge and this edge. So the short case 3, and now if you take a look, if I go back to the object mode and if I deselect it, see how the smooth work on this side and compared to the other side, like the top right with the bottom left. You can see it acts like in a different way because I had more subdivisions in this area but not in this area. There is another one, it's offset edge loop, which is basically same thing, but instead when you choose the offset edge loop, it creates two edge loop parallel to each other on either side of the loop. So I'm gonna explain the offset edge loop, create another cube. And as I mentioned, offset edge loop is similar to edge loop, just it creates two edge loop for you parallel of each other on the either side of the loop that you have. So basically, if I select that one, and as you can see, it is not also the opposite side. So I select that edge. Now I create two edge loop on two others, I mean on the either side of the loop that I have. So one thing is that about like using the edge loop or offset edge loop is that it sometimes doesn't go all around, I mean doesn't count the loop all around the object. It sees like based on the endpoint that it's defined for itself. So right now it defined the endpoints here, and it doesn't go like a loop all around your object. This is nothing surprising. You will see it when you use the insert edge loop or offset edge loop. For example, if I create this shape and I try to insert the edge loop, so as you can see on this side, it doesn't go all the way. You can see just like a stop on one side because it sees the end from here to here, as it doesn't like work properly with the triangles. But on the other side, for example, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Like on this side, as you can see, for example, it reads the whole loop and it creates it all around the object for you. So let's talk about multi-cut tool. I created data sphere. So when I select the multi-cut tool, it automatically again use the edge component for me. Also, you can have access to the multi-cut tool through modeling toolkit. I find it very helpful and handy to use it from the modeling toolkit. So if I click on the multi-cut tool, basically opens up the uh, options for me too, but also I can double click on the tool and it brings the tool setting for me. So what multi-cut tool does is to connect two different edges or more than two different edges to each other in order to insert or add more edges. It's somehow similar to what insert edge loop does. Insert edge loop adds more edges, but as a loop for me, multi-cut tool, in this way that I'm explaining it, it creates again edges, but not in a form of loop. So what I do, I select the edge that I want. So click once, it creates one point for me, and like any other edge that I want on my mesh, I can select it. For example, not necessarily the one next to it, any other edge, for example this one. As you can see, it creates that connection, like different edges for me to connect these 2 points to each other. One thing that you need to remember every time when you use the multi-cut tool, you have every time that you do like the start point clicks, the other point, which is like the end point click, then you have to press enter or return in order to create your um, connection. Like this, I press enter and it creates these basically edges for me. So again, if I click here and I click here one more time, enter, it creates that edge for me. For example, right now, when I add this edge, it reads this part as a face for me. If I go back to the face mode, for example, again, I'm in the multi-cut tool. So I go to the selection tool, and now you see it reads this part as a face for me because it separated this, it basically cut this quad into two sections. So one is here, one is here. For example, if I do the command E, and if I want to move it, this is like the shape that I can extrude it. So one other use of multi-cut tool is if I go to the options for the multi-cut, you will see it has for the slice tool option, which is like delete faces and extract faces. So I'm going to show you how it works. This is really handy. So for example, if I go to the delete faces and I can, it says like a slice along plane, and you can choose so which axis you want to do it. So if I select it, and right now, for example, based on the axis that I selected, I can, in this case, using the slice tool, you have to drag your mouse outside your mesh in your viewport. So, and you need to choose along which axis you want to do that. So right now, if I drag my mouse, you can see just like a slice my sphere and remove that part. Another option is to extract faces instead of delete, and if I slice it again on the same along the axis that I choose, as you can see, just like slice it in two different sections. One thing that you need to remember, your shape is still, so if I go to the object mode, still I have it as one shape. Okay, let's get rid of the mesh and talk about the last option in the mesh tool, which is sculpting tool. Sculpting tool work for both mesh and NURBS, and also it has the panel here which you can choose the sculpting tools. That's a similar thing that you choose it from the mesh tool, sculpting tool. These are all polygon sculpting tools. So if I click on the sculpting tool, I mean, there are different options you can play around and see how they work, but first let's create the polygon. I choose the sculpting tool. I can reset the tool. So a sculpting tool is basically helpful when you want to sculpt part of your mesh. It's really helpful, for example, when you work on a character and you want to work more on the details of the face, and it's like a sculpting with clay. Think about it that way. So basically in a sculpting mode, you have a brush that you can change the size of your brush. What you need to do, I mean, if you press BB is the short key for your brush, and what you need to do, you need to hold the B with left mouse button. If you drag it right and left, you can change the size of your brush, which is like you see it's really big right now for me. So I hold the B, left click, and drag right and left. So I change the size of my brush. Is the short key, but also if you click on the tool setting, and you can see it has the option for the size. Basically you can change the brush size here too. As you can see, just like I made it 55, it's too big, and I make it 1. Now you can see a smaller. So there are different options for the sculpting tool. You can just like click on them and see how they work. There is like a push, smooth, pull. I mean, based on the surface, basically your brush will be snap or attached to your surface, and based on the form of the brush that you can use, you will do different changes to your surface in terms of sculpting it. Strength is basically the pressure of your brush. If you add the strength, basically your um, brush will affect in a more strong way on your surface, and as you make it less, it's gonna be a smoother on your surface. Also, the symmetry is really helpful when you want to sculpt your mesh in a symmetrical way. For example, you're working on a face and you want to affect both sides of the face in a symmetrical way. You want to sculpt, I mean, it's not the right way to sculpt one side and then go and sculpt the other side of the face. It's never gonna be the same. In order to do it like in the same way for both sides, you can turn on the symmetry option, and you can choose which axis you want to affect. For example, I want to do the object X, and as you can see, my brush is duplicated in 2, and if I work with it, you can see it is sculpted for both sides. And if I, for example, press 3, and now you can see the changes that that I add to my mesh. It's like a smoother by making it smooth. So at this point you have the fundamental understanding of using different tools for creating 3D models based on the polygon in Maya. So what I want for your small project is based on the knowledge that you have so far using these tools, and also using a basic look development tools. I want you to think about your first project, the emotion that you choose, and based on the sketches that you have and the knowledge that you have so far, try to create first version of your 3D poster. So don't be really picky about making everything work in a way that you want, and like sculpting or 3D modeling in a really refined way. Think about more using different tools and like creating the organic forms and adding interesting shaders and colors and light and render your first version of your 3D poster.